the book the book that you wrote came out of your own experience? You can say the full title again for me. My memory is not right there. Um, but you had wanted to be a monastic and couldn't find a way to do that. Could you say a little bit more about that process?
Absolutely, Linda. Yeah, so my book's title is Budding Lotus in the West, Buddhism from an Immigrant's Feminist Perspective. And in my book, especially chapter 3, I talk about how I pursued manhood several times. Once I was distracted by a romantic prospect, but the other times, the main barriers were the lack of access, opportunity, and support for female aspirants compared to our male counterparts. For example, one monk told me he doesn't accept female disciples anymore because of limited spacing of his frequent travels, but because he finds it easier to communicate with monks than nuns on delicate matters. Um, and then another monk that I wanted to study under resided in a monk-only temple, and sends all of his female disciples to other temples. So when I learned that, I felt no need to pursue him any further because what's the point of having a teacher who's not present to actually teach us? Um, but the experience that I spent a lot of time reflecting on is my residential internship at a Zen monastery, where I was placed under numerous restrictions and rules, me and women and nuns that were not placed on laymen and monks. And unfortunately, some of these rules were enforced, initiated by the nuns themselves, the senior nuns. So I was forced to reflect on, how to the extent to which internalized oppression, women carry, you know, and um, continue to really harm female aspirants like myself who want to pursue this path with all her heart, but is not getting the appropriate support that's needed. Um, and and yeah, and it just made me ponder about how do we really break free from these social conditioning, not just women, but also men, right? So that women can fully participate in Buddhism.
So this is probably a big question, but fast forwarding. Well, let me get a time frame. Maybe that would be helpful. So at what point did you say, okay, I'm not going to become a monastic. This is not the path for me. When was that? How did that come clear to you?
Yeah, thank you, Nelly. So, uh, my last attempt was like 2 years ago, and that was like my fourth attempt. And there's a saying like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. and, and I was already 35 2 years ago. So I was 35 at the time. At that age was when the Buddha had already become enlightened. And so it was just, I just felt, I think after that attempt, I realized, you know what, maybe this path is not for me in this lifetime. And I want to acknowledge that there are many women or female aspirants who probably have experienced the same challenges as me, but managed to continue find a way to ordain. But we're all different. And for me, every time I face conditions or a community that is not ideal for me, I choose to walk away. You know, I am someone who's very protective of her happiness. I don't suffer well. So it's too much for me to try to navigate clouds of mistrust and hierarchy and inequality on a regular basis and being so helpless and voiceless, right? When you're a lay woman, you have very little power or, you know, and influence, right? You just do what you're told, and to not get the support you need, and you just at some point, you know, I chose to walk away. Yeah, I think so. That was like 2022 or something like that. I'm now 38 years old.
So did you start working on the book soon thereafter?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I received the book contract in November of 2022.
Hmm.
So like months later, and I was like, excellent. So one of the reasons why I really wanted to pursue the path was, you know, to eventually become a Dharma teacher so that I could really help spread the word. I'm really passionate about social change and making a positive difference. And just knowing that I can't do that through monasticism, but now I get to do this book. It feels really great. I've been just really happy to giving this opportunity to still share a bit of myself with the world and make the positive difference that I can with this book.
The book so shows your deep love of study, and the scholarship in it has helped us, I'll say Nelly and I, tremendously. I thought one of the points that you made about the historical Buddha, you know, how could such a person actually divide the world into men and women, and you know, and some of the things that we've inherited, really say that those are added on. That's added on to the teachings and culture, the culture that was lived in at the time. And that was very helpful to, again, reinforce that the teachings, you know, aren't pure. We didn't get them, you know, in this pure way. That there's so much to learn about them. I mean, Nelly, you were talking about the suttas that Ni brought forward and how they meant so much to you because of your relationship with suttas.
Yes, I've had that's the word, a difficult relationship with the suttas because I know, I mean, and because they seem so, now I don't know if I would have said these words before, but patriarchal. And they also seem so rigid, just so rigid. I start to read them and I can't, because they just seem so rigid. And so, you know, I feel like you opened up some freedom about that for me, like breathe some more life into them.
Absolutely. I think when we reflect on how these texts were written, the era, the time, but then who were the writers, who were the authors. And I highlight in my book how there's a teaching by the Buddha who says he has all these disciples, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. You should all come together to recite the teachings, comparing meaning with meaning, and to help them last a long time. So he was very intentional in making sure that all his disciples are included in the recitation process, but at the first Buddhist council, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, only monks were present. Lay people and nuns were neither invited nor allowed to participate. And you know, it doesn't surprise then that misogynist narratives got squeezed into some of these sacred texts that serve the patriarchal interests. And we need to acknowledge that's what happened. You know, otherwise, all these inconsistencies and discrepancies don't make sense. So to pretend that like everything that's in the Pali Canon, the early text, is the word of the Buddha, is, I think, being intellectually and morally dishonest. And the sooner we admit that and recognize that and take actions to boot out these sexist texts and laws that prevent women from fully participating, the sooner we can build a Buddhism that, that truly reflect the Buddha's actual teachings.
I love those words. I'm
Yeah.
jotting down: intellectually and morally dishonest. I love those words. I mean, I don't love what they mean, but
Yeah, I was going to say,
clear.
yeah.
No, how clear
Right.
how they make the point so clearly. That is what I love.
Yeah. Nee, I'm wondering how you are now that this dream of being the monastic, of going in that direction, and how are you now with what's happened and where you're at? And
Yeah, thank you. In some ways, I've been like just taking things one day at a time. I find that I tend to now take a lot of refuge in myself. As everyone has mentioned, there's a lot going on out there. And the only thing that we could really control in every moment is like our reaction and then like our peace, And so I've taken refuge in solitude a lot. I've been becoming more of an introvert. And, just doing what I can to manage or control my time. I do appreciate the opportunity now to have like full control over my schedule and time and people that I allow in my life. Where, at a monastery, then you have to go with the flow, with the communal rules and restrictions. But, I will say I still, the 9 to 5 daily grind work schedule still doesn't like feel natural to me. I think Americans we too hard. And so for me right now, the challenge and maybe opportunity is to try to still find how to find meaning and peace in the midst of modern demands, right? And like that sweet spot. And I will say, I mentioned this earlier, but thanks to this book, which has been a great source of joy and comfort for me. I found a lot of meaning in that. Like just, it brought me here, brought me to meet Nelly and Linda. And I'm someone who is always so, like, my passion is to like read the Dharma and discuss the Dharma and help spread the word so that we could all be a little kinder and more united and harmonious, as the people. And this has allowed me to do that. So ultimately, I'm content, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking perhaps that whet people's appetites, and we'll get to talk a lot more.
Right.
Maybe
Tomorrow, Nee will do some presentation on chapter 5 of her book. So if you do have the book, you could check that out.